I don't know if I truly believe in the supernatural, but after that night, I don't need convincing anymore. Let me start at the beginning, where everything seemed innocent, like just another evening with friends. My name is Jacob, and this happened when I was living in New Orleans, back when I was 24 years old. A group of us, mostly old college buddies, decided to get together one weekend for a fun night. We rented an old house on the outskirts of the city, one of those crumbling beauties with a lot of charm but a lot of history too. We were about to start the usual, drinks, music, laughing, but then someone brought up the idea of using a Ouija board. It was Marissa, a girl I met in college. She had this energy about her, one that made everyone want to do what she suggested. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was all some silly thing people did when they were too drunk. But Marissa was insistent. "Come on, it'll be fun," she said. "You guys are afraid of ghosts or something?" I told her I wasn't afraid. In fact, I thought it would be fun, if for no other reason than to laugh at how ridiculous it all was. Little did I know, this would turn out to be the worst decision of my life. When she pulled the Ouija board out of her bag, I felt a chill run through the room, but I didn't let it show. The board looked old, worn, the kind you find in antique shops, with the letters faded and the planchette chipped. But what really got to me was the atmosphere in the room. The air felt thick, heavy. It wasn't just the booze anymore, it was something else, something tangible. Marissa laid the board on the floor, dimmed the lights, and everyone gathered around. "Everyone put your fingers on the planchette," she instructed. We did. There was a brief, awkward silence before she said, "Is anyone here with us?" At first, nothing happened. But then, slowly, the planchette started to move. Not a lot, just enough to make you wonder if someone was pushing it. But I swear, I wasn't touching it. The temperature in the room dropped. My breath came out in small, visible clouds. The planchette moved again, spelling out a single word. "Help." I remember laughing nervously. "What the hell is this?" I asked, trying to play it off. But Marissa, her face pale, didn't laugh. "Who are you?" she asked aloud. The planchette moved again, spelling out another word, Jacob. I froze. That's when I felt it, a presence in the room, like something was watching me. The air felt electric, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. I looked around at the others. They seemed just as confused as I was, their faces pale, their eyes wide. "Is there something you want from me?" I asked, my voice shaky now. The planchette moved again. "Leave." There it was, clear as day. The thing, whatever it was, didn't want us there. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my palms sweating. I moved to take my fingers off the planchette, but they wouldn't budge. It was like they were glued to the board. The room felt colder, and the lights flickered. I could hear a low whispering, just out of reach, like voices that weren't mine, voices I didn't recognize. Panic started to settle in my stomach. Marissa looked horrified, her face drained of color. "Okay, enough of this," I said, finally pulling my fingers away with a force that felt unnatural. But the planchette didn't stop. It kept moving. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. I tried to tell myself that it was just a trick, that the board was malfunctioning, or maybe someone else had their fingers still on the planchette. But the coldness in the room, the whispers, the unease crawling up my spine, none of it felt right. Everyone else sat frozen, their fingers still pressed lightly against the planchette, but I could see their faces, their eyes wide with fear. They weren't playing anymore. Marissa's voice shook as she asked, "Who are you? Why do you want Jacob to leave?" The planchette moved again. This time, it spelled out something that made my blood run cold, "You can't leave." It was followed by a long pause. No one spoke, no one moved. The tension in the room was suffocating, and I felt my chest tighten with every second that passed. There was something ancient, something wrong about the way the board seemed to come alive beneath our fingertips. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to demand we end this stupid game, but my body wouldn't obey. My legs felt like they were cemented to the floor, and my fingers were still stuck to the planchette, as though something unseen was holding me in place. "Jacob," Marissa whispered, her voice barely audible, "are you okay?" I tried to respond, but the words caught in my throat. My vision blurred for a moment, and when it cleared, the room seemed darker, deeper, like the shadows had taken on a life of their own. The lights flickered once more, casting an eerie glow that made the whole room feel like it was moving, breathing. I could see faces in the shadows, faces that weren't there before, watching us with empty eyes. Suddenly, the planchette shot across the board, jerking violently, and the lights went out. For a moment, everything was pitch black, and I could hear my own breath echoing in the silence. The kind of silence that made your skin crawl, that felt like it was pressing in on you from all sides. Then, a cold hand, ice cold, brushed against my shoulder. I froze. My heart stopped. I didn't turn around, didn't dare look, but I could feel it, the presence right behind me, close enough to reach out and touch. The lights flickered back on, and for a split second, I saw it. A shadow, tall, thin, standing just behind me, a dark outline that blurred in the light. It wasn't human. "Get out," the voice whispered, and it wasn't Marissa's. It wasn't anyone's voice I knew. The planchette moved again, faster than before, as though it were being pulled by some unseen force. It spelled out a single word, "now." My heart hammered in my chest as the air grew thick with something I couldn't explain, something ancient and angry. The temperature in the room plummeted, and I could see my breath again. I wanted to scream, to run, to flee from this place, but I couldn't move. And then, Marissa screamed. Her scream cut through the air, high-pitched and desperate. We all turned to her, and I saw her eyes wide with terror, staring at something none of us could see. Her hand was clutching her chest, as though she were trying to hold something inside of her, something that was pulling at her from the inside. "Something's in me," she gasped, her voice cracking. "It's inside me, Jacob. It won't leave." I reached out for her, but before I could grab her arm, her body jerked violently, as though she were being controlled by some invisible force. Her mouth opened, but no words came out, only a low, guttural sound that sent a shock of dread through my spine. I was paralyzed, unable to help her. Someone, was taking over, and I had no idea how to stop it. The whispering grew louder, and it wasn't just coming from Marissa anymore. It surrounded us, like it was coming from the walls, the air, the very ground beneath us. All I could hear was that voice, repeating the same words over and over again, "You shouldn't have called us. Now you belong to us." I was about to reach for the door when the room went silent again. The oppressive weight in the air lifted, but the terror didn't subside. Marissa stopped convulsing, and slowly, painfully, she turned to face me, her eyes now vacant, empty. "I'm so sorry, Jacob," she whispered, her voice low and hollow. Before I could respond, the lights flickered once more, and she collapsed into my arms. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I saw in the reflection of the window behind her. A face. A pale, twisted face, staring at me through the glass. It was grinning. It wasn't human. I couldn't move. Not at first. Not after I saw that thing staring at me through the window. I remember my pulse racing, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I held Marissa in my arms. Her body was limp, her eyes glassy, unseeing. I kept whispering her name, shaking her, trying to wake her up, but it was like she was miles away. I knew something had taken hold of her, but I had no idea what, or why. "Marissa, wake up!" I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. But she didn't stir. I looked around at the others, Chloe, Derek, and Mike. They were frozen, their faces as pale as ghosts. Derek, who had been sitting across from me, was staring at Marissa with wide, horrified eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing on me, the air thick with dread. I could almost taste it, metallic, bitter. Suddenly, I heard something. A low scraping sound, like nails on a chalkboard. It came from behind me, a dragging, slow movement that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I turned slowly, dreading what I might see. The shadow in the corner of the room was there again, the same tall, thin figure. It wasn't human. Its form was elongated, twisted in a way that defied logic, like a reflection warped in a funhouse mirror. Its eyes were the worst part. Dark, hollow pits, glowing faintly with an unnatural light. It didn't have a mouth, but somehow, I could hear its voice in my head. "You shouldn't have called us, Jacob." I stumbled back, my legs giving out beneath me. The world spun. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my throat. The figure in the corner moved, its limbs jerking unnaturally, like they didn't belong to a human body. It glided across the floor, not walking, but floating. As it came closer, the temperature dropped even further. I could see my breath in front of me now, thick and misty. I turned back to Marissa, hoping that somehow she'd wake up, but she remained motionless in my arms. The others didn't even seem to notice the figure in the corner, they were all still staring at Marissa with blank, terrified expressions. Derek was the first to speak, his voice trembling. "Jacob. What? What the hell is happening?" I didn't have an answer. I was too terrified to speak. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all, but nothing made sense. The Ouija board. The shadow. Marissa's possession. Everything was happening too fast. I looked down at Marissa again, and for a moment, I thought I saw her lips twitch. She wasn't completely gone. There was something still inside of her, some part of her still fighting. I tried to pull her away from whatever was controlling her, but she suddenly jerked, her eyes snapping open wide, unfocused, wild, and glowing with a strange, unnatural light. Her voice, if you could call it hers, came out in a guttural rasp, low and distorted. "You cannot leave. You called us, Jacob. Now you belong to us." I could barely breathe, the words scraping against my insides. I tried to move, to get away from her, but I couldn't. Her grip tightened on my arm, and I felt the coldness of her fingers seep through my skin. It wasn't her anymore. Whatever had taken hold of her was using her body, controlling her, and it wasn't done with me yet. I felt it, a presence moving closer, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. The shadow. It was standing just behind me now, its presence so close that I could feel its coldness seep into my bones. I turned slowly, and this time, I didn't need to see it to know what it was. I could feel it. It whispered in my ear, a voice so chilling that it felt like ice had been poured into my veins. "You shouldn't have stayed, Jacob." I whipped around to face the others, desperate for help. But they were all staring at me now, their faces blank, expressionless. Derek, Chloe, Mike, they were all there, but they weren't them anymore. Their eyes were wide and empty, their bodies stiff, like marionettes on strings. The shadow moved closer, and the words came again, this time louder, clearer, "You are ours now, Jacob. Forever." I tried to scream. I tried to run. But my legs wouldn't move. The room spun, the walls seemed to bend and warp, and all I could hear was the whispering. The relentless, maddening whispering. "You called us. You opened the door. And now, you can never leave." I felt a presence pushing down on me, pressing me into the floor. My body was no longer mine. My mind was slipping away, drowning in darkness. My thoughts were being replaced by those whispers, filling my head until I couldn't tell where they ended and I began. And then, just as suddenly as it had all started, it stopped. I woke up on the floor, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. The room was silent. Marissa was gone, her body, her voice, everything. The others were standing there, staring at me with blank expressions. Their eyes were empty. I don't know how long I was unconscious. It felt like hours, days, an eternity. But when I woke up, something had changed. I wasn't the same. None of us were. It took a while for the others to snap out of it, if they ever truly did. When I looked around, I didn't recognize them anymore. Their faces were pale, lifeless, like they were just going through the motions of being human. Marissa, the girl who had brought us into this madness, was nowhere to be found. There was no trace of her, no sign that she had ever existed in this house, except for the lingering, bone-chilling feeling that she, or whatever had been inside her, was still there, somewhere. I remember stumbling to my feet, my body shaking uncontrollably. The room was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. And then, just as I began to gather myself, something horrible happened. Derek, he was the closest to me, his face still a mask of dread, suddenly turned his head to look at me, his eyes cold and unblinking. "You should have left when we had the chance," he whispered, his voice so flat, so devoid of life, it didn't sound like him at all. "Now it's too late. It's too late for all of us." I took a step back, heart racing. What did he mean by that? What was too late? But before I could ask, the room went dark again. Completely dark. The lights, the flickering that had plagued us earlier, vanished altogether. For a moment, I thought it was another malfunction, just a power outage, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't a coincidence. I could feel it before I saw it, the air growing thick, oppressive. My breath became shallow. It was like something was closing in on me from all directions. The cold returned, far colder than before. And then I heard it. A sound, scratching, dragging, like fingernails on wood. My blood ran cold. I tried to scream, to move, but my body wouldn't obey me. It was like I was frozen in place, helpless. The shadows in the room seemed to pulse, their dark shapes stretching across the walls like living things. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, the same figure, the one I'd seen earlier. It was standing in the doorway now, its pale face, or what could be called a face, barely visible. Its hollow eyes gleamed, but it wasn't looking at me anymore. It was looking at Derek. "You're next," it whispered, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. I wanted to shout, to grab Derek and pull him away, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight, my vision blurred. The figure began to move closer, and Derek didn't even flinch. He just stood there, like he was in a trance, his face still blank, his body stiff. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure lunged at Derek, its long, twisted arms reaching out to grab him. I watched, paralyzed, as Derek's body jerked violently, like he was being pulled into the figure. I could hear the sound of bones cracking, but there was no scream, no cry for help. It was like Derek's soul had already been taken from him, his body just a shell. The figure disappeared with him, vanishing into the shadows, taking Derek with it. I couldn't process it. I couldn't understand what was happening, what had happened. But I knew one thing for sure, we had made a mistake. A horrible, terrible mistake by inviting whatever this was into our lives. And now, it was claiming its price. I turned to Chloe and Mike, hoping they were still human. But they weren't. Their eyes were empty. Lifeless. They were staring at the spot where Derek had been, not moving, not speaking. And then, in a voice that wasn't their own, Chloe whispered, "We should have listened. It never leaves." I felt the air around me grow heavier, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Something was in the room with us, something unseen, pressing down on me. I didn't dare turn around to see it. I didn't want to. I could feel the darkness closing in again, surrounding me from all sides. Whatever it was, whatever had taken hold of Marissa, of Derek, it was still here, still watching. Waiting. And it wasn't done. I couldn't breathe. The air around me was so thick it felt like I was drowning. Chloe's voice echoed in my ears, "It never leaves," like a curse, like an omen. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My body refused to obey me, trapped in this nightmare of my own making. Mike didn't speak. He just stood there, his eyes vacant, his face pale, as if he were staring through me. I reached out to him, desperate, but he didn't even blink. It was like the Mike I knew had disappeared, replaced by something else, something hollow. I couldn't take it anymore. "Mike! Chloe!" I shouted, but they didn't react. It was like they didn't hear me. The shadows in the room shifted, as if they were alive, swirling and stretching in unnatural ways. The coldness grew, creeping into my bones. I felt the same sensation I had before, that suffocating presence, like something was crawling beneath my skin, ready to burst out. I wasn't alone. It was here, with me. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic scratching. It wasn't the same sound as before. This was deliberate, slow, as if it was drawing closer, closer still. The floor beneath me seemed to vibrate. My heart was hammering in my chest. I looked around frantically, trying to find some way out, some escape, but there was nothing. Just darkness. Just shadows. And then, the voice. "You shouldn't have stayed, Jacob." It came from all around me, from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. It was in my head, too, echoing in my thoughts, twisting them, making my mind spin. I turned in every direction, trying to locate the source, but there was nothing, nothing but that voice, that constant whisper. The shadow appeared in the doorway again, just like before. This time, it wasn't just standing there. It was moving, its form shifting, blurring, as if it was being pulled between this world and another. I couldn't look away. I was frozen, my body unwilling to listen to reason, to fear. The creature, it wasn't even human anymore, if it ever had been. Its limbs were too long, too thin, and they bent in ways that no human body should. Its face, when I dared to glance at it, was twisted beyond recognition, hollow eyes, no mouth, just an expression of pure, ancient malice. And it spoke again. "You didn't listen. Now you belong to us. Forever." The room seemed to pulse with those words, a cold vibration that sent chills down my spine. I wanted to run, but where? The door was no longer there. The windows? Gone. It was like the house was swallowing me whole. I turned to Chloe and Mike again, but this time, I saw something different in their eyes. It wasn't just lifelessness anymore, it was understanding. As if they had accepted what was happening. As if they had already been claimed. "Jacob," Chloe's voice was barely a whisper, hollow, dead. "We all called it. We all let it in. And now we are its. There's no way out." She was right. I knew that now. I had been so sure that it was all a joke, that it was just a game, just a stupid Ouija board. But the truth hit me like a freight train, we had opened a door we couldn't close. And now it was too late. I looked at the figure in the doorway again. It was moving closer, its presence almost suffocating. The walls seemed to lean in toward me, and I could hear something else now, something deeper, older, like a roar from the void. A roar of hunger. I wanted to beg. I wanted to plead, to ask for forgiveness, but I knew it was pointless. This thing, whatever it was, didn't care. It had claimed us. "Please," I whispered, but the word got caught in my throat. And then it was on me. The shadow moved in an instant, faster than I could react. Its limbs wrapped around me like a vice, its cold touch burning my skin. I could feel it, deep inside my chest, as if it were sinking into my soul, erasing me, consuming me. I tried to fight. I struggled, but my body didn't respond. It was like I was being pulled into something deeper, something darker. The last thing I remember was the whispering, growing louder, more insistent, until it was all I could hear, all I could feel. You should have left, Jacob. You never should have called us. And then, nothing. I don't know how much time passed. I don't even know if time exists in the place I ended up. All I remember is the darkness, the absolute, suffocating darkness that seemed to swallow every part of me. It wasn't like anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't the kind of darkness you experience when the lights go out. This wasn't physical. It was a weight, a presence, a force that seemed to stretch beyond everything, beyond reality itself. The air, if you could even call it air, was thick, viscous, like I was breathing in something other than oxygen. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel real. But I knew, deep in my gut, that I was still alive, somehow. That part of me was still here, but I didn't know where here was. Or what it was. The whispers were there again, but this time, they weren't just in my head. They were all around me, echoing, vibrating through my very bones. I couldn't understand the words at first. They were like a language too ancient to grasp, too deep for my mind to comprehend. But then, one phrase broke through the static. You failed us, Jacob. I jerked, spinning around in the dark, but there was nothing. No one. Just the cold, empty void that stretched in every direction. It was like I was floating in space, untethered, alone. But I could still feel it, the presence, the one that had been with me all this time. The one I had invited in. The thing I'd let through the door. I remembered it now, the shadow, the thing that had haunted us, that had claimed us. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a spirit or some otherworldly force that we had unleashed. No. This was something else. It was ancient. It was primal. It had no name. And it was still here. You should have never played with the board, I heard the voice say again, this time not just in my ears, but in my mind, seeping into the very core of my being. I felt the pressure building inside of me, as though it was pulling something from me, draining me. It was too much. The cold was unbearable. And then, without warning, the darkness split. A crack formed in the void, light spilling through. It wasn't sunlight. It wasn't anything natural. It was pure, searing white light, blinding and suffocating all at once. I reached out, instinctively, but it wasn't my hand that moved. It was someone else's. Someone, or something. A vision unfolded before me. It wasn't the house anymore. It was a place, an infinite abyss, with towering spires and endless pits. A landscape I couldn't comprehend. But amidst this chaos, I saw the faces of the others. Marissa. Derek. Chloe. Mike. Their faces were twisted, contorted in pain. Their eyes were empty, like mine had been, like they had all been consumed by whatever this thing was. I heard their voices, or at least what used to be their voices, whispering to me, their words soaked in anguish. We were wrong, Jacob. We thought it was a game. But it's never a game. I wanted to scream, to cry out, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. My body was numb. I was just, there. Lost in this endless, suffocating place. Then the creature, no, the thing, emerged from the light. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was fully formed, standing before me, towering above. It wasn't a figure. It wasn't a person. It was something beyond that. Its limbs stretched impossibly long, thin like spider legs, and its face was a blank, empty void. There was no anger in its presence. No malice, no hatred. It was simply, inevitable. It wasn't here to punish me. It was here to take me. To claim me. To claim us all. You called us, it whispered, its voice cold, devoid of emotion. And now we take what is ours. I realized then that it wasn't about me, about what I had done. It wasn't about the Ouija board. The board had only been a tool. A vessel. What had been waiting on the other side had always been there. Waiting for someone foolish enough to open the door. I was just one more soul lost to it. But I couldn't give in. Not without a fight. I don't know how or why, but something deep inside me rose up, something primal, something human. I fought against the darkness, against the force that had claimed us. I didn't know if I could win. I didn't know if there was even a way out. But I had to try. Leave me. I screamed, even though I knew it wouldn't do anything. But I had to say it. I had to try. The creature loomed over me, its presence like a heavy weight on my chest. And then it did something I didn't expect. It tilted its head slightly, as if considering me. It whispered one last time, just before it engulfed me in the void, "You think you have a choice, Jacob. You never did." I don't know how long I was lost in the darkness after that. Time didn't exist here, or maybe it had stopped altogether. The void had swallowed everything, my thoughts, my sense of self, my memories. I was nothing but a fragment of something that once was. But through the endless nothingness, I could still hear it, the whispering, relentless and cold, swirling around me like a storm. You can't escape. You are ours. It wasn't the creature speaking this time. It was something else. A multitude of voices, overlapping and distorting, some familiar, some not. It was as though the creature had taken pieces of everyone who had ever called upon it. Pieces of their souls, their essence, now trapped within the void. I thought about my life before all this. I thought about my friends, my real friends, the ones who had never been part of this nightmare. My family. My mother, who would never understand why I disappeared. I had always been a skeptic. I had laughed at the supernatural. And now, here I was, a part of something so much darker than I could have ever imagined. But even as all this crept into my mind, even as the weight of it all bore down on me, I felt a strange sense of clarity, a realization that perhaps, in the end, I still had one final choice. Fight. It was a voice, my voice, but not my voice, breaking through the endless dark. A scream, a cry for help, for freedom. And then, suddenly, I wasn't in the void anymore. I wasn't in the infinite nothing. I was standing on solid ground, breath coming fast, the air alive with a strange electricity. I looked around, and everything was different. The shadows had receded, the world wasn't bending anymore. I was back in the house. The same house. But different. It was as though time had twisted, the air thick with a sense of dread that clung to every surface. The furniture was covered in dust, the windows cracked. And I was alone. No Marissa. No Derek. No Chloe. No Mike. But I could feel them. They were still there, somewhere, their souls trapped in whatever hell we had opened that night. It was like they were echoing in the very walls of the house. And then, I saw it, the Ouija board, lying in the middle of the room, just like it had been that night. The same old, cracked board. The planchette, now resting on the word goodbye. I didn't want to touch it. I knew what would happen if I did. But I had to. There was only one way out. My fingers trembled as I reached for the planchette. The moment my fingers touched it, the room seemed to shift again, the air growing thick with pressure. The walls groaned, the house itself seemed to be coming alive, reacting to my touch. I could hear the whispers again, louder now, coming from every corner of the room, scratching at the edges of my mind. You should have never returned. There is no escape. There is only us. But I couldn't stop. My hand moved the planchette, pulling it across the board. Slowly, deliberately. It wasn't me controlling it, It was as if the house was forcing me to do this, dragging me back to where it all began. The planchette slid, first to the yes, then to the no, back and forth, as though it were mocking me, toying with me. Then I did it. I spelled out the words. Let us go. The room shook, violently, the ground beneath me rumbling as though something beneath the house was awakening. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping in an instant until I could see my breath swirling in front of me. The house felt wrong, like it had become something else, something that didn't belong in this world. And then, everything went quiet. For a moment, it was as if nothing had changed. But I felt it. The pressure lifted. The whispers were gone. The weight on my chest, the feeling of being watched, of being claimed, was gone. I was free. But at what cost? The house, now silent, felt more like a tomb than a home. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left behind. Something still lingered. I looked down at the Ouija board. The planchette lay motionless, but the letters on the board had changed. They weren't the same as before. They spelled one final message, too late. And then, in an instant, I was standing outside the house. The world was calm again, the night air cool against my skin. The house loomed behind me, silent, but I knew it was still there. It would always be there. The darkness, the shadow, would never truly leave. Not for me. Not for any of us. I don't know how I made it out. I don't know what happened to Marissa, to Derek, to Chloe, or Mike. I don't even know if I'm truly free, or if I'm still trapped in some twisted version of reality. But I do know one thing, the Ouija board isn't just a game. It's a door. A door that should never be opened. And once it's opened, it never stays shut.